And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech. It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans.
What's up, everyone? Karoline Leavitt is furious over the nonsense the Democrats pulled during Trump's speech yesterday, and she didn't hold back at all in today's press conference. Let's dive in.
And as President Trump asked in his speech last night, how could anyone possibly be opposed to any of this action that he is taking? Well, apparently, the modern-day Democrat Party could. The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people. Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court. Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for two mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine, not for America. Last night was a very clarifying moment for our country. The Democrats exposed themselves as the party of insanity and hate, the party that wants to put America last. They've allowed their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech. It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans. We have an individual in our new media seat today, Mary Margaret Olohan, who is the Daily Wire's first ever White House correspondent. Congratulations, Mary Margaret. The Daily Wire was founded 10 years ago by Ben Shapiro. The Daily Wire now has over 1 million paid subscribers, a monthly network reach of 138 million, and has evolved into a leading conservative multimedia giant. They are now the 5th largest podcast network in the world and home to some of the top-ranked shows.
What does it say that the Democrats, while they couldn't stand for Americans or stand for victims, they stood for war and clapped for war and clapped for 5 more years of war?
Yeah, the president addressed that last night, I think, when he called out Senator Elizabeth Warren and said that, as I said in my opening speech, very telling that the Democrats refused to clap for American people and American interests and American priorities, but they did clap for the country of Ukraine, which, by the way, the president's working very hard to end that war. So Democrats should be applauding him for actually doing something about it.
Karoline Leavitt hits the nail on the head with this speech. The Democrats' behavior during President Trump's address was shameful. They couldn't even stand for basic issues. They're more interested in divisive politics than in putting America first. And CNN? What a joke. It's hilarious that even their own viewers aren't buying the nonsense they're selling. The Democrats are nothing but hypocrites, only in it for taxpayer money. They don't care about anything else. It's all about feeding off the system while the rest of us are left picking up the tab.
Over many novel press access restrictions, criticized the recent changes to the press pool made by your office. She said in an interview, quote, "What we're looking at is what North Korea is doing." What's your response to that? And can you say anything to allay concerns that unfavorable coverage will be punished in this new press pool system?
I think that's the same individual who said from this podium numerous times that the commander-in-chief was mentally and physically up for the job, which we knew was a lie. Many people in this room knew it was a lie. Many of you were admonished for asking questions about that truth. So when it comes to truth and transparency, this administration, this White House is setting the example. This president is taking far more questions than his predecessor, Joe Biden, did on a daily basis, and that will continue.
One, on the reprieve that is being granted to these three automakers for 1 month on the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. How did the president settle on 1 month?
Mm-hmm. The reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 2nd, and he feels strongly about that no matter what, no exemption. So that's where the 1 month comes from.
Does he expect them to be able to shift production within a month?
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal. Suit last night, and I think the president liked that very much, and he looked great. Speaking of the president, he just passed me a note while I'm standing here. He wanted me to hold this up. This is the poll that I cited, the CBS YouGov poll that shows that 76% of those who watched the president's speech last night approved of his speech. And so it goes to my earlier point that I made in my monologue about how incredibly sad it is that we have a modern day Democrat Party who is so severely out of touch with the American public. This is a great poll. The ultimate poll, though, came on November 5th when the president won by an overwhelming margin that he spoke about last night. Democrats weren't happy to hear that either. With that said, as the president said last night, his administration is wholeheartedly committed, of course, to ending the inflation nightmare caused by the Biden administration. Look at the deregulation efforts. Look at the president's push last night in his speech for Congress to pass tax cuts, to end taxes on Social Security and overtime pay for hardworking Americans, end taxes on tips. We need Congress to get that done because that's going to put more money back into the pockets of the American people. And I didn't even mention energy. Look at the president's approach and focus on unleashing the might of our energy industry. We know that's the number one driver of inflation. He's been slashing back a lot of the burdensome regulation from the previous administration to unleash our energy industry here at home, which will drive down costs. He said he is committed to making America affordable again. He did it in his first term, and Americans can trust him to do it again.
Not one Democrat senator voted to protect women's sports from males. Not one Democrat congressman or congresswoman stood to applaud or support protecting women's space and sports at the president's joint session to Congress last night, as you articulately mentioned at the beginning. So I'm wondering, what message is that sending to not only young women who are competing in these sports across the country, but also to the parents of these young girls?
Yeah. I think the message that Americans should take away from last night is that they have a president in the Oval Office who is committed to doing what's right for them, especially women and girls across the country. And I think it's very ironic, thank you for bringing up the point about women, that Democrat women were wearing pink to support our fellow females, yet they couldn't stand, again, for a young woman who was almost killed and severely injured by a man on the volleyball court. They couldn't stand for the mothers of two beautiful young women whose lives were taken tragically at the hands of illegal people. So you can't say you're the party of women and then support men and women's sports and not stand up for basic law and order and immigration reform that will protect women in this country. That's what President Trump is doing. He's the president for women.
Just about the hostages, or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail them here. There are American lives at stake. I would defer you to the Department of State for further details, but I'm not going to get into those talks here at this podium.
Karoline Leavitt is absolutely right. The Democrats are against everything that's actually benefiting the country. Trump's initiatives, like the money Elon Musk is helping save through projects like Doge, are truly putting the American people first. Meanwhile, the Democrats continue to waste taxpayer money on absurd things. $50 million for condoms in Gaza, or a staggering $10 million on studies about transgender rats. How is this even real? It's outrageous. Instead of addressing real issues, they're prioritizing nonsense, and Karoline is spot on for calling them out. We need a government that focuses on what truly matters, not wasteful spending. If you enjoyed the clip, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.